This is the footprint of the anchor box project. I met with a friend of mine, Greg, on his boat yesterday, and he wants a box that goes in front of his front cabin to store anchor lines and snubbers and anchor balls and stuff. It's kind of a limited space between here where I'm walking and the Samson post, so we couldn't make it any bigger than that. So all I did was I laid these sticks out on his the deck of his boat, and we moved them around until he said that's what I want. So I glued and clamped the corners, and now the glue's dry. I can take the clamps off and trim it. The box is going to be 18 inches tall, and it's going to be out in the weather, which is a problem in Louisiana because, man, with our high temperatures and high humidities, it is really hard to get anything to last out in the weather. So I think I'm going to build this box solid fiberglass. Use the old houseboat ceiling scraps to get me started, and see how it goes. Now, Mr. Greg is like the most generous person in the world and the easiest person to work for. I could have bought brand new marine plywood or that imported hardwood plywood, or I could have bought that foam board that's meant to put fiberglass, be fiberglassed, and no matter what it costs, he wouldn't have blinked an eye. He doesn't care, he just wants it done well. But I'm just not comfortable building it with wood, and if I build it with the foam board and then coat it with glass, the sides are going to be kind of thick, and it's really going to be small anyway. So I'm going to use up the rest of this old houseboat fiberglass panels. I'm just going to kind of cut them out and glue it together and straighten them up and round the corners and sand them clean, and then put several layers of glass on top of this. I'm going to make like a mold with this fiberglass, but it will be permanent mold. It will be incorporated into the box. I've used this stuff to make lots of different things, and it, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. It holds up really well. So that's what I'm going to do. Might take me a little longer, but I think I'm just more comfortable using this stuff than buying something that I've never used before. Okay, here we go. This is the bottom. I laid out the exact template, and I know my sides are going to be roughly 3/8, so I removed 3/4 from one side and one end to make sure the finished product is pretty close to this size. Okay, just cut the bottom out of this. This was originally the bench seat upstairs in the houseboat. I pulled all these sticks out of here, and it's time to clean up the bottom before we go any further. So the bottom of the box is cut out and sanded clean, and the gel coat remover, I'm going to glue the corners. This will be the underneath part. Got all the dirt and grime sanded off of it. So now I'm going to cut up the rest of this seat bottom because I want these little angles. I want all these little angles. I'll cut them about 1 inch by 1 inch to go around the perimeter of all the box to help glue it together. I think it's going to be easier to sand if I sand it before I cut it up. So I'm going to go ahead and sand it. Okay, we've got all those corners cleaned up, and now I'm going to cut them into usable parts. Good progress for the first couple hours this afternoon. I got the bottom cut to finish size, and I got lots of angles cut. They still need to be cleaned on the inside. The outsides are clean, and I'll go around the perimeter and epoxy and clamp these in place. That'll get the warp out of the bottom. It'll give it some strength. It'll make it real easy to glue the sides with epoxy, and I'll bevel these edges so I can lay glass from the bottom across the angles up to the top to the sides. Here I'm going back and trimming all the angles. The leg lengths were different on all of them, and now I've marked them all. I'm cutting them all the same. Here I'm sanding the gradu off the inside edges of the angles, and you can see how well this fan makes my life pleasant. Seems like no matter where I set up on top of the box fan, it just sucks all that dust away and blows it out into the yard. But a good rain will make it all go away. Ready to glue our first corner on. I've got a 2x4 front and back notched so that I can have it something to pull it down level to. And I've got the first 3 corner braces cleaned up. That's this one, and this one. And I have them clamped to a straight edge, so when I put them down here and clamp them onto the bottom, they'll be in a nice straight line. And once they're clamped, I can take this little board off. Here I'm cutting up the old, what's left of the old houseboat ceiling. I'm cutting a front, a back, and 4 pieces for the ends. So I'm going to double those up. Then it was time for lots of sanding. I sanded the backs to get a smooth surface and knock off some of the old dead fiberglass resin. And then on the other side it had gel coat, and I sanded the majority of that gel coat off, especially where I was going to do all my gluing. Got the first few angles glued to the bottom. On this end I couldn't clamp it down, so I just used some gravity to help me out. The 2 ends I'm doubling up this glass. It's a little bit thin. I'm just I sanded it clean. I wiped it down with a solvent to get the dirt off, and I'm applying some thickened epoxy and just put them back to back, and then put another pair on top of that and weight them down, and that's all you have to do with this epoxy. It doesn't require huge clamping pressure like wood glue does. Oh yeah. Alright, we have an ambitious glue up this morning. I'm going to glue these angles, which are held straight by this board, to this back of the box. I didn't do them yesterday like I said I would. I'm going to glue the 2 end panels in place, and I'm just going to temporarily screw them at the bottom because I don't have a way to get a clamp on them. These are the ones that I doubled up and weighted down with the battery for a clamp. So they're pretty stiff now. And I'm going to glue the little closure pieces down by the toe space. Just I didn't want that support to be vertical. I want to kind of kick it back just for aesthetics. When I'm gluing these fiberglass pieces together, I try to prime them with unthickened epoxy. That helps get the epoxy all up in all the little nooks and crevices and microscopic cracks. Make sure you get good adhesion. Then I go back with some thickened epoxy. Used lots of clamps, not because I need clamping pressure, just because I'm trying to pull these warp pieces down flat to the top of that 2x4. That's my straight reference line. So when the epoxy cures, it'll come out nice and straight. And then the end panels, I don't have a lot of clamps, but I had 4 screws in each one, and it's pretty flexible, so it pulled up tight. And of course, first go around, I put the glue on the wrong side. Had to
Couldn't figure out why the holes wouldn't line up.
Oopsies.
And I realized it, but I was consistent. I did both ends on the wrong side. Here I'm cutting up the last of my fiberglass scraps. This was the front and the back of the old box seat from the houseboat. And I'm going to use these two flat panels to brace up the flat panels that go on the front and the back of the new box. So I've spared you a lot of footage of sanding, trimming, grinding. It's kind of pretty boring. But then when they're ready, I just spread thickened epoxy on them and flip them over, put them together, and weight them down so they're flat. They don't have to be excessively clamped. They just need to be flat, because when it glue dries, they're going to be whatever shape they were before the glue dried. So you got to make sure you get them at least enough weight down to get them flat. We got the first panel unclamped this morning, and it came out nice and flat. That's what we were hoping for. And second panel, getting ready to take the weights off of it and open it. Yesterday we glued the back and the front on. In this corner, I hot glued these sticks on here to kind of straighten it out because it had a bow. And I clamped this because this side wanted to go in too far. On this corner it was totally different, and what I did was hot glue these little sticks on these corners so the clamps could grab them. The front corners are going to have this curve, so what I'm going to do today is bevel this, get that pipe clamped in here with some tape on it so the epoxy won't stick. Put a couple of layers of cloth on these corners on the outside. And when that's cured, I'll turn it over and remove the pipe, and most of the cloth layers will be on the inside. And then structurally it's done. So I'm set up to put cloth on the front two corners. I've got a piece of PVC pipe with some packing tape on it to kind of give me my rough radius. It won't be perfect by any means, but all I want to do is get a couple of pieces of cloth so the thing will hold itself together, and then I can sand and grind and get it round. And this was really tricky. I ended up, the bottom of the PVC pipe I fixed first. The other one just with hot glue. This one didn't want to stay, so I had to back it up with a board and more hot glue. And then you're trying to get this floppy panel straight and this floppy panel straight and the pipe straight and the other two sides straight, and then you're trying to get them to match each other at the same time. Well, I bet I went back and forth for an hour before I got it all stable. So now I'm going to put a couple of sheets of glass, and like I say, I'm not looking for perfection. I just want to lock it into this position and let it cure so I can move on down the road and start beefing it up from the inside. Okay, that went well. I got a layer of tape on the back corner. I think it's 6-ounce tape, but I'm not really sure. And I got 4 layers on each one of these front corners. So the hard part for me is going to be to not touch this for the rest of the day. I'll let it cure, and then boy, I can go to town. Then I'm going to flip it over and do the inside corners and the bottom corners and trim the top to the right grade and start working on the wood top. This is a milestone right here. So I was able to get the PVC pipes out. It wasn't really too bad. Still pretty limber. And it's kind of cold today, but I'm going to go ahead and put some glass on the inside, and then I can put a light bulb in here and close it up for the night. And hopefully the epoxy will cure. On my box build here, I've been battling some low temperatures and some incredibly slow setting epoxy. So I do the epoxy work and then I cover it at night with a blanket, and I have a light bulb in there. And not crazy about this. I'm kind of scared of a fire, but that's what I've been having to do to get it to cure. So it's cured up good. So another day, a little more epoxy. So today I'm going to put the final glass on this bottom inside corner. Got all my pieces cut. They'll go from here all the way to here. And I glued a stiff piece of fiberglass around the perimeter to make a lip. I know earlier in the video I talked about covering this whole thing with cloth, but it's not needed. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do these inside corners, and then I'm going to turn it over and do the bottom outside corners. And then I bought something. Bought some Total Fair, and I will fair up the outside, and then we'll make the wooden top, and that may be another video. This one may be getting a little bit long, but that trick with putting a light in it and covering it up was a big help. Now my epoxy sets up hard overnight, so it's sandable the next morning, and it wasn't doing that before without the light. So the box part of the box pretty much complete. All the corners have been glassed. The inside corners are all glassed. All the sides are doubled. I got a little stiffener across the front, fiberglass. It's just been too freaking cold. I had to bring the box inside last night. Spent the night next to the Christmas tree. Try to get this stuff to cure. So I'm not going to mess with epoxy today. The high is supposed to be 50. But I am going to start on the top. So I turned the box upside down and traced it on this piece of plywood. And I'm going to start playing with boards and trying to see what will look the best for the wooden top. And with the warmer temperatures and the aid of the lamp overnight, all this set up good. Bottom's finished. All I have left to do on the box is to fair the sides with the fairing compound and clean the inside and paint it. First coat of epoxy fairing compound on and sanded. So if I was an expert at this, I probably could have got it better, but this is pretty good for the first coat. It's sanded. Actually, I put it on this morning and it was dry enough to sand already, in spite of it being rainy all day. Second coat will be a little easier and a little smoother. And by the time I put the third coat on, it'll be dang near perfect, because every time you put a layer, it just makes it that much easier to get the next layer flat. All right, progress on the box. It's got a couple of coats of paint, which is basically primer paint. I've sanded it. It's not the same color as his boat, but it's close. So these two finish coat sanding will act like a primer coat. I've got a vent in each end because this will be a wet locker. For one thing, it's on the front of the boat where the waves come over in rough water. Two, it's got the piano hinge, which is not watertight. So I drilled some weep holes or drain holes on the bottom of these two little feet, and I put a vent on each end, and the teeniest little screws I had still poked through, so I kind of grinded the tips so they wouldn't hang up on anything. The top is working really well. I have it clamped in place and everything is good, but I don't have a way to fasten it. So I'm going to take these aluminum angles and rip them on the table saw, where I can probably through bolt them to here, through here, because this is thick and heavy, and then try to get some vertical screws up into the teak. That way the top will be removable come refinishing time. I'll probably put one on each end, and I need to hit the top with the roundover bit and deliver it. He's got some painters that paint on his boat. I'll let them do the final painting. They'll probably do a better job than me anyway. Come along. I got the two little angles ripped down and screwed to the back and the top. And I got the top kind of rounded over a little bit. And the box is done. Time to deliver it.